Peter Manuel has arrived. How are you, Peter? Come closer to the microphone.
I'm good, Jeremy. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm well. You would find a caller like that interesting. I don't know if you heard much of it.
No, I didn't.
Well, the idea that we have abundant coal, we have cheap energy, we have uranium, we have abundant gas, and yet while we can export all of this for others to benefit from, we can't benefit from it ourselves.
Well, I think it's all orchestrated. I think communism is playing a huge part in all this.
Yeah.
You've got the United Nations, World Economic Forum and so on.
Yeah.
And our politicians have got to start thinking about Australians and got to think about we the people.
Well, when you look at some of these demonstrations, the people who are out there pushing for the yes vote, and you see the red flag with the hammer and sickle everywhere, Are we forgetful? I mean, are we so young that we have forgotten what the hammer and sickle is a symbol of?
I think the trouble is, Jeremy, there's a lot of people that don't join the dots. And they try to keep people, concentrating on football or sport full stop. And it's a shame, really, but I like you, are fully awake of what's going on, and I think we're being gutted from the inside out. And our politicians are an absolute disgrace for what they're doing to this country. I mean, this voice, this yes vote, is already dividing people.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't come in, it's already dividing. And I think Albanese is an absolute disgrace. I mean, I can't trust the guy. Plenty of other people. I mean, just one little thing with electricity power, if he got in, that was going to be cheaper. That hasn't happened. As you've mentioned about coal and uranium and so on, what are we going to do with these wind turbines and solar panels after about 10 or 15 years? Where are we going to dump them?
Well, that's what I've heard, that they do dump them, which is a disgrace in itself.
Yeah, and they don't rot away. I mean, the amount of energy it's taken to produce these wind turbines and solar panels,
that's right,
they're not going to be able to produce the energy that it's cost to make them.
No. So, where in all of this is the media? Why isn't the media pointing this out? I mean, I do it, you do it. Why isn't the popular day-to-day media, mainstream, I don't know what you'd call it, they should be on it at 1,000,000 miles an hour? It's a great story. It's a con.
It is a con, and I think you know well enough about the mainstream media, Jeremy. Let's put it this way. You're probably the greatest radio talkback host in Australia, and you speak out, which is brilliant. I think they've been bought. If you have a look at the corporates, have a look what went on with Qantas, all the corporates, they've all been bought. It's very, very sad. The no voters are not really getting a say publicly, but I tell you right now, the people I meet with, I know which way they're going to go. They're going to go no, because they can see, as I said, communism that's crept into this country. And we just have to look at one thing. Thomas Mayo, who's had a huge input into this voice, allegedly said...
one of the architects.
Yeah, allegedly said that he'd like to thank the Aboriginal communist elders. Now,
yeah, well,
wouldn't that ring a bell? Wouldn't that ring a bell? And if we have a look at... in July this year, 1st of July this year in Western Australia, the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, which was absolutely disgusting. Farmers couldn't even put a post in without getting one of these Indigenous consultants out at $160 an hour. There's 3 tiers, actually. It goes up to $280 to put a damn post in. You can't plough paddocks. Imagine how much this is going to cost. And imagine if you got some fencing jobs or whatever on your property, could take months. It'll send you broke. And that's why I mentioned communism, because that's what this is about.
And if you think of Western Australia, where they had that legislation and the farmers were just about up in arms, they were about to revolt, and the suspicion is that Anthony Albanese rang the Premier of Western Australia and said, look, shelve that legislation. Now, whether he means shelve the legislation till after the vote, or they are genuinely sorry that they introduced something that was so disruptive to everybody and so annoying to everybody.
Well, I don't thank the Labor government too much, but I thank the Western Australian Labor government for bringing it out when they did. because it's really opened a lot of people's eyes. And it wasn't just going to affect farmers, it was going to affect blocks of land 1,100 square metres and upwards. So hang on, what's the difference between 1,100 square metres and upwards? What about all these subdivisions that are going on that, okay, their blocks are split up, 400 square metres, 600, they're not affected, but have a look how many houses are on that, particular subdivision. I tell you what it's about. This is about votes. And they know there's a lot more people out there living on 400 square metres, 600 square metres, 800 than what there is on 1,100 square metres. Because have a look at Mount Barker. It's at the moment, 18% built on. There's another 82% housing to go there. So this is about votes, Jeremy, and I think it's absolutely disgusting what's happened to this country in a very, very short time. And, like you, I'll keep fighting. I've got 5 children, 11 grandchildren, and I can't just sit back and let this country be absolutely sabotaged by these radical lefties.
Well, I don't get why the media isn't jumping all over this story. I heard somebody the other day saying, you'll hear all of these scare tactics from the vote no people, but the truth is it goes back to the Wick and the Mabo days when the same sort of scare tactics were being employed. People were being told that they would lose their backyards. Now, if you look at it in the cold hard light of day, with the Aboriginals now having ownership or legal title to 55% of the mainland of Australia, I got to tell you, a hell of a lot of people must have lost their backyards.
And there's going to be a hell of a lot of farmers lose their farms with this native title.
What are we looking at? We're looking at taking this wonderful, prosperous, peaceful country, and for the sake of 3% of the population, and not even the 3%, because I'll guarantee you that there are probably a fraction of that 3% are the activists and the revolutionary people who want to turn the country upside down. And I don't know that in their heart, I can't speak for them, of course, but I don't know that in their heart they're trying to do anything for Aboriginal people.
No. Look, I've had a lot to do with Aboriginals. My wife comes from the most isolated place in New South Wales. We've got a lot of Aboriginal friends. They know damn well this is nothing about them. In fact, I feel very, very sorry for the Aboriginal people that they've done this because I keep saying this is communism. This is not just Australia. This is happening all around the world. This is the radical left. This is the way they work. And we've got to really, really spread the word and speak to people and just say, look, this is not what it seems. I saw an ad on TV and it's about, more Aboriginal kids going to school and they'll be able to go and play more sport. Well, have a look at the amount of Aboriginals we've had in sport, in tennis, in football, and the list goes on. They've got access to just as much, if not more, than us white people. And
yep. So it's a call which may be on this very subject. We'll see. Hello?
Hi, Jeremy. It's Wes. I rang you last week and I got cut off. It wasn't a CIA satellite or anything.
No.
It was me pushing a button.
I've got Peter Manuel with me. We're talking about the no vote and we're talking about the climate change and other things.
Yes, I'm just listening to it. I'll just touch quickly on Graham Archer there. What he was saying about the family killings and that. If anyone wants to look at it, there's a documentary you can watch online called The Clown and the Candyman, which is about 2 serial killers in America. But there was an organisation that they said was tied up with it called the Odyssey Foundation, and they interviewed 2 detectives. And they said it had links to Australia, and it was basically an organisation that trafficked in and abusing teenage boys. But the 2 detectives, when they went to do further research on it, all the documents in New York ended up being destroyed. But I reckon there's a link there somewhere. But going on to the voice, my thing with it is that what they're doing, it's basically a product what they're trying to sell with the Yes campaign. And the problem is with it is that it's like if you go and buy a car from a used car salesman and he'll only let you look at the tyres. He'll say it's got 4 fairly good tyres on it, and you say, but I want to have a look under the bonnet. And they say there's no need to have a look under the bonnet. It's got four good tyres.
Exactly.
And no matter what you say, they won't let you have a look at it. And you drive down the road after you've bought the car, and next minute you find out the head gasket's gone and it's got coolant in the oil and all that.
Well, where's it simple? Let the buyer beware. Always be more curious than anything else. And if you're in doubt, don't.
That's it. But they've, while selling their product, they went from promoting it very quickly into ad hominem attacks against anybody who was in the no camp. Which is a really bad look. I mean, concentrate on your product, but then they claim that what they're selling will promote healing, peace, and justice and everything. And the first tools that they bring out of the toolkit are threats and allegations of racism and all these things. You better do this, you better do that. Well, that's not selling a product. That's bullying.
Yeah.
But their own people have also made mistakes in their life. They've said the quiet parts out loud. Like, Albanese is saying there's only one page to this, when the other people in the yes camp have been blabbing out the details about what it's all about. But I base my vote on what I've experienced. Like, I mean, 40 years ago, I was a park ranger in the Northern Territory, and I dare say that everybody that lives in a remote area will be voting no because of their experience with what's happening with the Aboriginal people. Now, when I was up there, I worked at Ayers Rock and Alice Springs Telegraph Station. I saw some absolutely horrific sites and instances of child abuse and neglect that got brushed off. Like we see a House of Horrors thing in Adelaide, and that's front page on all the papers, on the internet and that. I saw children in worse conditions than that every day of their lives, just not fed, infested with nits and everything. And it's called the bigotry of low expectations.
But to tell you what, Les, the thing about it is the money. Somebody should be angry enough, and I would think perhaps we should start with the media. Somebody should be asking, where does the $40 billion go? And to my knowledge, these various, some just under 4,000 bodies, committees, boards and whatnot, apparently don't have to account at the end of the financial year. They just get another lot of money. They got to spend the money that they're given, and away it goes again. But where does the money go? Thank you. Listen, I got to move on. I'm running out of time. Peter Manuel's my guest. Peter, did you see the thing with Sam Newman?
Yes, I saw a bit about that.
Yeah. Former footy great Sam Newman has launched an extraordinary attack on First Nations people. Well, I wouldn't call it that. And the AFL over this welcome to country business. Now, the idea of people being welcome to their own country seems to me to be very strange. And on top of that, you've got organisations like the AFL paying these people to do a welcome to country.
It's a farce, Jeremy, absolute farce. Sam Newman's done nothing wrong at all. I think Daniel Andrews, he needs to take a good hard look at himself when his thugs were firing rubber bullets on peaceful protesters back in the lockdowns. No, look, I commend Sam for standing up. This welcome to country. Welcome to Australia. We're all Australians. Have a look at our national anthem. We're supposed to be one and free. We're supposed to have freedom of speech. I've certainly found that out, that we haven't got freedom of speech anymore. That's a load of garbage.
Well, it can lose you your job. Be careful.
Yeah, I know people that have, Gerald. I know people that have, good people that have. And particular person that did lose his job, I've never listened to that radio station ever since. But look, it's a situation now where it's purely about divide. We have a look at other countries that have gone down the communist way, Venezuela and so forth, thriving countries now, they're just absolutely ruined. The same thing's going to happen here to this country if we don't stand up. Good people have got to start to stand up, ones that might not want to speak out publicly, but they really need to start to, because if this yes vote wins, boy, we're in trouble. Have a look at the Indigenous rent tax they want to bring in. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, how much is it going to be? I said, don't worry about how much it's going to be. Listen to the words, rent tax. we don't own anything. Have a look at Linda Burney, federal MP for the Labor Party, wants to bring in that the First Nations own the water. I can tell you now.
And the beaches and the rivers.
Yes, the whole lot. So people, honestly, wake up. Don't be hoodwinked by Albanese crying and all the rest of the garbage. We saw it with Bob Hawke over the years and different ones. If you want to live in a hopefully free country, vote no.
Yeah, I don't know about Sam Newman saying that he wanted people to slow clap and boo when they came out and did the welcome to country, but whether people do that or not in a free country, you should be able to make that decision yourself.
Look, years ago, I mean, I used to go to the footy. I used to be a West Torrens supporter years ago, and you know, there'd be booing. There was no harm done. There was no violence.
Good-natured.
Exactly. That's the wording, good-natured. And, you know, but the trouble is the way they've changed it all around, it's disgusting.
Well, the welcome to country seems to me to be nothing more than a bit of a money stream for aunties and uncles, and then on top of that, they reinforce every time they do it, welcome to country. They're reinforcing their ownership of the country. And in actual fact, if you want to live in the Australia that I love, and I can see you've got flag on your shirt there, it's the country you love, we want to have one country.
Exactly.
One flag, one national anthem. We're one people, under one rule of law, with one constitution.
Correct.
I don't see what the argument is. Unless you want separate development.
That's what communism is, dividing people, dividing countries. And I'd like to know, you know, when you look at, I call them Aboriginals, I mean, what do they call them? Indigenous, First Nations, all the Aboriginals, I mean, how many different tribes were there? You can't tell another
400.
You can't tell another tribe what to do. This voice is not going to bring all those tribes together.
No.
It is not going to happen.
No, one Aboriginal can't speak in his country for another Aboriginal in another country.
That is correct.
So, but all of this should be exposed by the media because it's part of the great lie.
They're being paid. They've obviously been paid big time not to get the truth out. It's disgusting.
Well, that is really bad. But I've been saying this for years, and I'm glad to see that somebody else has it written down here. If we are at all serious about the welcome to country and the nonsense that has suddenly taken over in the last 20 years from a completely harmless piece of comedy by one Ernie Dingo. Now, I know it's true because I interviewed Ernie Dingo and he told me it never ceases to amaze him that a funny little piece that he put in one of his stand-up acts, this welcome to country thing, has suddenly taken off as a significant part of Aboriginal culture.
Didn't he bring that? That was about 1971 or 76.
Yeah, well, it's been around for about 20 years, but it has somehow been weaponized. A bit like climate change, a bit like...
Don't get me on about that.
Oh, my God, yes.
Climate change. Could you invite Tim Flannery here one day and have a chat with Tim Flannery?
He's the one who said it would never rain again.
Dams wouldn't fill, creeks wouldn't flow. I've got 2 creeks at home. They started flowing earlier this year. I mean, we're supposed to have a climate emergency. They started flowing earlier this year, and they normally dry up around end of November, December. They'll do the same thing. If we have a look at this beautiful spring day, it's not an emergency. Everything's normal. Don't be hoodwinked, people. Don't be conned.
Yes, it is true. It must be true. It's being led, I think, by a gullible media that the sky is going to fall. But nobody is prepared to say that the emperor has no clothes on.
Exactly right. It's interesting because, you know, now they're really pushing. It's going to be another hot, dry summer and all the rest of it. Well, have a look at Dorothea McKellar's poem.
Yes, indeed.
You know, it's people honestly just need to start thinking for themselves. Join the dots with anything. Whatever you're talking about, just join the dots, and then all of a sudden you'll realise what's happening.
I don't know if you know Professor Ian Plimer.
Yes.
But he is the man. He's my go-to man for anything on the climate because he can tell you the science.
He is absolutely spot on. I've got his book, what is it, Not for Greens. He's got many other books. In fact, we've got a night for him in Mount Barker. I think I've got to check on the 20th of October in the old institute at Mount Barker.
But the media won't use him. They won't use him as a reference.
No, of course not.
Because he's not doing the narrative.
No, because he speaks the truth, and they don't want the truth. They certainly don't. No, he's a very good man.
Yeah, I agree with you. Tell me about FLAG.
Yes, I started FLAG over 13 years ago now, Food Producers Landowners Action Group Australia, and we're fighting for the rights to grow clean, healthy food by the mum and dad farmers of Australia. But what's happening is not good, Jeremy. I mean, now they're talking about charging us for stock and domestic water. So at the moment, stock and domestic water is exempt. So the minute they bring in charging for stock and domestic water, that means our dams, our creeks will all have to be fenced off. So native animals can't come and drink freely. They'll be drinking out of our water troughs, which there'll be a meter. So we're paying for the kangaroos and all the other native animals to have a drink, whereas at the moment they can come to my creeks, come to my dam and drink freely. Haven't got a problem. No problems there at all. So this is just another form of control and making it very, very hard for the mum and dad farmers. It's, they're going on now about, because of climate change, the bigger bushfires, farmers need to clean up their properties. Well, hang on. How about cleaning up our roadsides? I mean, our roadsides, if you ever come to Strathalbyn, give me a call and I'll take up our road and just show you the debris, the huge branches that are on the sides of the road that we can't touch because you get a heavy fine if you clean them up. This is a major fire hazard because, it's habitat. Well, the little lizard or one-testicled blue-eyed bullfrog, he'll climb up a bit of bark on a live tree and so forth. So this is just another form of control. It's got nothing to do with climate change. In fact, what we're going to have in this country are massive wildfires, not because of climate change, because if you drive around, they're planting all this low-density bush, I call it scrub, everywhere. This is causing the major...
You wouldn't plant scrub, would you?
Come up to Strathalbyn, I'll show you. We've got a bush called prickly acacia, Acacia paradoxia, highly inflammable, kerosene bush. You're not allowed to clear it. Now, if we've got a climate emergency, we're going to have bigger fires. Yeah. Isn't prevention...
It's a selective emergency.
Isn't prevention better than the cure?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you be able to clear it? Nothing grows under it. Yeah. It's disgusting. And look, when you look, we've only got about 4% of agricultural land where we grow food. Now, what they're doing now is they're giving farmers carbon credits. So if you plant your property out in trees and scrub, you get carbon credits. So less food production.
We'll see who's on the line. Hello.
It's John, Jeremy. How are you?
Hello, John. I'm with Peter Manuel.
Right.
What would you like to add to the conversation?
Because?
What would you like to add to the conversation?
Well, what I would like to do is talk about the voice, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. I'm kind of running out of time, but go for it.
All right. Well, I'll be very brief with this. Some friends of mine have been doing searches on the internet for me and doing Google searches.
Yeah.
2016, census, 640,000 people, First Nations people.
Yeah.
In 2021, it's up to 820,000 people.
Well, that's quite a population explosion, isn't it?
400,000 of those people are either own or are buying their own homes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's good. That's good.
25% of them are on disability pension.
That's right. It's an extraordinary number of people who are disabled, Aboriginal people who are disabled. I wonder why.
Yeah. And here's another thing. They want to close the gap.
Yes.
3.8 of the population is First Nations people.
Yeah.
Only 1.2% are interested in closing that gap.
Well, 1.2%, I was talking about it earlier, the 1.2% are the only people who are actually disadvantaged by this thing that can be described as a gap.
Well, here's another little fact that was given to me. Jacinta Price and Karen Little actually went to the government, this is the federal government, wanting an inquiry into the monies that go to First Nations people. $32 billion that's with a B, not an M, $1 billion a year, and they will refuse the opportunity to have an inquiry into it. And really, it needs auditing.
Well, of course it does. It also probably needs a Royal Commission. I don't know if Peter would agree.
Definitely need to agree. Look, I just wonder if things changed all of a sudden, and I'm not having a go at the Aboriginal people here, but let's just say that these ones that want to identify as Aboriginal, First Nation, Indigenous, whatever you want to call it, let's turn around and say, okay, all the money's stopped. We're going to give that money now if you identify as a white person. It'd be interesting to see what would happen to the numbers then.
Yeah, but where do they get the business of just saying, I identify as an Aboriginal or I identify? Surely it's got to be a little bit more scientific or credible.
I would have thought so. But
unless, of course, they are just trying to jump up the numbers to make whatever argument they want to make more substantial.
I think blind Freddie can see what they're doing, Jeremy.
Here's the last point that I want to raise, Jeremy.
Yes, John.
Halloran Hill.
Yes.
There's a park up there it used to be where the old CSIRO place was.
Yep.
And the Liberals turned it into a national park.
Yeah.
It's been revealed to me that there is a placard there near the playground area stating that Major O'Halloran hung 2 First Nations people there. But what they don't tell you is why. And it turns out there was a ship called the Maria that ran aground at the Coorong, and passengers off the Maria ended up on the beach, and there was some sort of argument between the elders of the Aboriginals, and they ended up clubbing and hacking 26 people to death. And one of them stole a gold watch and a chain and wore it around his neck, and that's how they caught up with him. And Major O'Halloran hung him as a warning. He held a drum court, and they found him guilty, and they were hung, and they were left hanging in the trees as a warning to any other ones. If you want to go around killing people, this is the penalty you pay. And at that time, you've got to remember, we only had we were under the British Empire at that time.
Yeah, but John, you know, they were pioneering. They were wild days. They were cruel and most disturbing. And I'm sure wrong was done on both sides. But we can't allow the crimes and the evil of the past to destroy what should be a good relationship between black and white today.
And yeah, well, that's true. And you know, last night they had a crack at Sam Newman about this welcome to country. I agree with Sam to a point. I don't believe in the booing the people. But personally, I'd like to see the audience just get up and start singing the song of Australia. That's what I would personally like to see.
I would rather like "This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land." I think that might be a good tune.
Good one.
Yeah, but see, look, I'm not against the smoking ceremony. I'll tell you how they should use it. On Australia Day, when people are being made citizens of the country, then I have no objection to them welcoming them to the country, and I reckon that where it should be used. But,
I would like to hear "Welcome to Australia."
Yes. I agree. Thanks, John. Appreciate the call. Yeah. Why didn't you run for Parliament, or why aren't you running for Parliament?
Jeremy, I get a lot of phone calls and text messages and running for mayor of Alexandrina and council and different things like that. But I know my limitations. And a lot of people don't.
I think you'd be brilliant.
No, I'm okay on the phone and talking, you know, like this. I even find this pretty hard, to be quite honest. I don't enjoy it. But
thank you for doing it.
It's something that's driving me and has done for years. And I'm not an academic, and that's probably what lets me down in the sense where...
No. We got enough academics and intellectuals and elites. We want real people.
Yeah, no, look, I really appreciate that. I really do. But that's certainly what we need. And, you know, I'm getting a bit older now and things like that, and there's got to be some good young people now that really need to start listening.
I think they've been brainwashed. I don't know that
they have, but they should be listening to people like you and me and other people that have been reasonably successful in business and what we've done. And that's what needs to happen. We've got to get these young people around and say, look, don't be hoodwinked by this other business. You're a so-called conservative, but where do you sit on all these other issues? Just because they call themselves a conservative, they really don't get the gist of it. They might be, oh yes, we're dead against the yes vote and this, but when it comes to where do you sit on food producing issues, where do you sit on climate change and all we need to sit down with these young people, and they've got to stand up and say, look, we can't go with this narrative. We just can't. We
can't go with the slogans, because a lot of these people, their only argument, whether it's the voice or it's climate change, they can mouth the slogans, but they have no idea of what science, if any, is behind it.
What I can't stand, Jeremy, and I've had a lot to do with politicians over the last 13 years, and what really makes me sick is that you sit down and talk to them, and oh, yes, 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 and damn well the minute they get up and walk out the door, they're not going to agree with you. Yeah. I say to them straight out, what I tell you to your face, that's exactly how I feel. When I walk out of this room, I'm not going to change my views.
Yeah, well, I'd rather like the old day where you had people of conviction. They didn't blow left or right depending on which way the wind was blowing. They had a philosophy, and they would stand up sometimes on a stump, sometimes on the back of a ute. And it might be a sort of a place like the Domain in Sydney, or it could be a park, or it could be anywhere, and you get a crowd around you and you persuade them to your way of thinking. You certainly don't get off that stump and find yourself in another group with a completely different argument.
No, definitely not.
This is what I believe in, and gather round me if it's appealing to you. But don't sort of blow hot and cold. No. So many of them do.
And this is where a lot of politicians let themselves down. They might say one thing to you and I, but when they're with another group, they're saying something else. We know different people. We hear it back, and we might say, well, hang on, little Jimmy didn't say that to our group. So, the best policy is to be honest, straight out. You're not going to please everybody.
No.
I remember when I bought my butcher shop many, many years ago, back in 1985, I'm a butcher by trade. And an old fella said to me, Peter, don't try and please all your customers, because you won't.
No.
And you can't please everybody, but you've got to stand for your convictions, and we've got to really fight for what's going on.
And that philosophy goes in this business as well, because I'm so tired of hearing, and I flick around and listen to radio in Sydney and Melbourne and Perth, and I get this terrible feeling where somebody who should have an opinion is sitting on the fence. Yes, Mary, I agree with you. But on the other hand, meaning he's having a bet each way.
Sitting on the fence.
Which, if it is a barbed wire fence, is a damn uncomfortable place to be sitting.
Well and truly.
Anyway, it's wonderful to see you.
Jeremy, I can't thank you enough. Somebody like you that's invited me in here to have a bit of a chat. It's fantastic.
I'd love to keep in touch with you, and anything I can do to help your organisation.
That'll be fantastic.
Because you and I think alike.
No, it's great. And look, at the end of the day, even if there's something that we disagree with, we still respect each other.
Absolutely.
And it's the Australian way. We've got to have that right to have an opinion.
No, absolutely.
But thank you very much, Jeremy. I much appreciate it.
Bless your heart, and thank you very much for coming in. Peter Manuel, ladies and gentlemen. I'll give you a few more dates. I haven't got a music track to play you because we're operating on I don't know, Andy, what would you call it? It's kind of like it's jury-rigged, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, well, Peter, it is a unique setup. There's not too many radio stations on broadcasting from the dining room table.
I'll tell you an interesting one.
Yeah.
When I ran for Fraser Anning, because he met with me and said, look, Fraser, I'm not looking for a job. He said, mate, I need people like you to stand up. Would you just run? And I said, yeah, okay. Anyway, this is between us.
Yeah. Well, you're on the air.
I won't say.
No, but look, it's the best things we ever hear, and things we're not supposed to hear.
But the biggest joke of all is, I was more or less told that I couldn't go on a certain radio station until after the election. Now we're supposed to have freedom of speech.
Oh, good God, that's ridiculous.
I mean, this country is so bad at the moment, it's disgusting.
We need to shake it up.
And that's why this is so important.
Yep, well, there are no rules here, and certainly no prejudice, and I hope just open-hearted, open-minded broadcasting of ideas and other people's convictions.
Well, I'm inviting you to my property, Jeremy, and I want to show you stuff firsthand, and boy, you'll shake your head.
Good to see you again.
Good on you.
Okay, take it easy.